The timeline is the main part of the interface in Premiere Pro that you're going to be interacting with. It's the place where you put your clips together and build your sequences. And sequences is the business that Premiere Pro is all about. A sequence is simply a series of clips, one after another, where time moves left to right, that together form your finished film, program, video, whatever it is that you're constructing, you're going to construct it in the timeline. Now, the timeline panel doesn't actually say timeline at the top of it, as the other panels might describe themselves in the interface. Instead, what you get in the tab at the top of the panel is the name of the sequence. And I'd just like to take a few moments to run over some of the main controls on this important panel. For a start, the reason that the name appears at the top of the panel is that you can have multiple sequences open at the same time. So I've got a whole bunch of media in this project. If I just randomly grab one and drop it onto the New Item button to make a new sequence, you can see I've got a sequence now named after the clip. I'll just make this really obvious. I'll call this second sequence. There we go. So now you can see I've got one sequence called Mountain Race Sequence and another one called Second Sequence. These have only got the word sequence in because I happen to have named them that way. And in fact, let's have a look now. If I view these by name, there's my second sequence. And if I look at the top of my project panel, I can see that's actually inside a bin. So I'm going to go up a step. And I'm going to pull that out and put it into my sequences bin just to stay nice and organized. Anyway, I'm interested in this mountain race sequence. First of all, some fundamentals. Let me resize this here. So time moves from left to right in the sequence panel. And you'll notice I've got a playhead control at the top here and some time code along the top measuring the passage of time. Depending on your zoom, these numbers will display differently. If I zoom in or out, it's going to, as you can imagine, it's going to show a different gap between the numbers. The vertical red line here indicates where within my media I am based on my playhead. And in fact, the playhead behaves exactly the same as the one under the source and program monitors. Actually, this yellow mark at the bottom of the program monitor is the same one as the one in the timeline. And you'll notice, if you watch this very carefully, as I drag through my media, there you go, you can see this icon moving. So the distance between the left edge and the right edge here of the little navigation part of my program monitor is actually representative of my entire sequence. If I zoom out a bit, you'll notice there's a navigator at the bottom of the timeline in the same way that there's one at the bottom of the program and source monitors. I can zoom out with this a long, long way. There we are. Now you can see as I drag this playhead control at the bottom of the program monitor, it's also moving the playhead in the timeline. So these two are intrinsically connected in the interface. I can zoom in and out on the timeline both by adjusting the navigator here. You can see I can drag through with this, I can zoom in and out with it, and also by using the plus and minus keys at the top of my keyboard. Now, you'll notice if you look at your keyboard now, they're not really plus and minus keys. It's the hyphen key, which above it there's an underscore, and the equals key, which above it has the plus. But if you tilt your head a little bit and squint maybe, it kind of looks like plus and minus, and I can use those to zoom in and out a lot. I can also use the backslash key to automatically zoom to show the whole of my sequence in a single step. Now, the location of the backslash key does vary from keyboard to keyboard, but it's the diagonal line that goes down from top left to bottom right. That's your backslash. Well, you'll know if you've got the right one because it's going to work. Playing videos on your timeline is very much like playing videos on YouTube or perhaps QuickTime Player or Windows Media Player. You've got a time marker, and as you press play, which is the space bar or the play button under the program monitor, you're going to see this playhead move from left to right.
1, go.
There we go. Not much audio on these clips. The difference is, if you are looking at one of those players and playing back a video, or in fact, for that matter, if you were looking at the source panel and playing back, you would just be looking at a single clip, a single item playing from beginning to end. In the case of the timeline, you've got multiple clips. Here's one, here's another, and they're strung together one after another. You see whichever frame your playhead is over. It's a little bit like a film projector, but in reverse. Rather than the film strip moving, the projector itself is moving across the film. You can also use the mouse wheel to move the playhead around. Now, if you look under your preferences, this is under the Edit menu in Windows and the Premiere Pro menu in macOS, you'll see that there's an option there under the General options for the timeline mouse scrolling. I've got mine set to vertical. If you set it to horizontal, then you can scroll your view of the timeline with it. The reason I have mine set to vertical usually is because of these. You'll notice that there are multiple tracks onto which you can put your clips. So the further a clip is to the right, the later it's going to be in your timeline. But the higher up it is, the more in front it's going to be. So, for example, I can click and drag this clip up. I'll pull the audio for it down. This is the audio part of the clip. If I move this over, you can see that as I drag through, there's this shot here, and you can see the image on my program monitor. As I drag through, now you're seeing this Joe curve shot. That's because it's above and in front of the video on video 1. Now at the moment, I've got 1, 2, 3 video tracks, and I've got 1, 2, 3 audio tracks. These are standard audio tracks. These will take mono and stereo audio. I've also got a master track, and the reason that's there is so that I can make very fine-tuning controls and adjustments to my output volume. If I want to, I can very easily add and remove tracks. So I can right-click on any of the tracks and either choose to rename it, which is very useful, particularly for your audio tracks, add tracks, or delete the track that I've got selected, the one I've just clicked on. If I choose to add tracks, I get this panel that allows me to add any number of tracks of any type I like. So I can choose to add a number of video tracks, and I can decide where it's going to go on the stack. I can choose to add audio tracks and where it's going to go as well, but also the type of audio track. This is going to be standard, which works with mono or stereo audio, 5.1 for clips that have 5.1 audio natively, originally, adaptive, which allows me to specify exactly which source audio channels go to which output audio channels, and mono, which is for mono-only audio. I can also create submixes where I can dynamically mix down my audio in much the same way that you would with a mixing desk. At the risk of sounding rather philosophical, what you're mainly going to be dealing with on the timeline is time and space. You've got time moving left to right and the spatial relationship up and down between your clip segments. You can play back using the spacebar to play and stop, and also using the J, K, and L keys. This is L playing forwards, J playing backwards, K pausing, in exactly the same way that you would in the source panel. You can go a frame backwards and forwards, and you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard to do the same thing. You'll notice that at the bottom left of the program monitor, I've got a timecode indication, and this is telling me the absolute timecode within my sequence. Right now, I'm at 6 seconds and 11 frames. I'm just going to pull this clip back down and tidy up my sequence a little bit. You can see over here, I have exactly the same timecode control. And with both of these, I can click and drag. So notice here, I'm clicking with the left mouse button and I'm just dragging left and right, or I can click and type. And so if I wanted to go to 7 seconds exactly, I could type 700 and enter. As long as you have nothing selected in your sequence, you see here I've got this clip selected or that clip and so on. As long as you have nothing selected, you can just type a number on your numerical keypad if you have one, and the playhead will jump to that point. So right now if I type 600, there you go, my playhead's jumped to 600. If I type in a plus or minus first, I'm going to go that many frames or that many seconds and frames. So I can type in, for example, plus 20 and enter, and I'm going to jump to that point. Now, if you have a segment selected, and this is a pretty advanced way to use the timeline, but just to warn you that it might happen, if I now type in, say, plus 20 and press enter, I'm actually moving the object I've got selected rather than moving my playhead. And of course, this has introduced a gap in my timeline. This is a pretty useful way of shuffling things around, although there are quicker ways of doing it with the mouse. One last thing to say about the timeline is you'll notice that there are a series of tools down here on the left, or at least they are in the default workspace. Each of these tools has a specific function on the timeline. All of them relate specifically to the timeline. They don't relate to any other part of the interface in Premiere Pro. Most of the time, you're going to want this selection tool. And the keyboard shortcut, as you can see in the tooltip there, is V for Victor. The selection tool is your friend. It's the tool you're going to use to move things around and interact with the timeline. And if you ever find that the timeline is acting a bit weird and not really doing what you expect it to do, it's a very, very high chance that it's because you've accidentally got the wrong tool selected. Just check you have the selection tool selected, and if in doubt, press the V key, V for Victor. It's going to take you back to that tool. So that's an introduction to the timeline panel in Adobe Premiere Pro CS6.